On December 27, 1892, Livingstone and Biddle College, now known as Johnson C. Smith University, played in Salisbury, North Carolina, with Biddle winning 5-0. Over time, HBCU football has evolved. HBCU football's popularity continues to rise. Millions attend games each year and millions more watch on television. The HBCU bands provide some of the top entertainment in the country. Over that time, some of the best players to ever play in the National Football League played at HBCUs. Every Monday through Friday on the HBCU Football Daily Podcast, national radio and television host Donal Ware takes a look at what's happening in HBCU football and talks with coaches, players, administrators, and media about the season. Make sure you join the conversation on social media. Now, here's your host, Donal Ware.
This is the HBCU Football Daily Podcast for today, Thursday, July 27th. I'm Donal Ware. I want to talk about the SWAC Media Day, which took place on Tuesday in Birmingham. And I'm going to tell you what, it was a great time to see a lot of my colleagues. I hadn't been to the SWAC Media Day since 2019. Guys like Roy Evans of BCSN, Dr. Cavill, right? Santoria Black, the play-by-play voice for Grambling. Charles Edmond, the play-by-play voice for Alcorn State. Mike Wallace, senior editor of Grind City Media, and CJ as well. They both host the HBCU Huddle podcast. They of course handle, meaning Mike specifically, is the director of the Memphis Grizzlies website, which is grindcitymedia.com. And as part of that, they have an HBCU piece, and their podcast is the HBCU Huddle. So it was great to see them, many more, to interact with colleagues, to interact with some of the coaches. As a matter of fact, I had yet to meet in person Coach McDowell, the head football coach at Florida A&M. Had a chance to meet him on Thursday. So it was just a great time in camaraderie. And, you know, I was able to interview a couple of coaches, but I wanted to kind of get a feel for the environment of what's going on with the respective school. So talking with some of the players, talking with some of the coaches, not even interviewing them. Like, for instance, Willie Simmons, just conversating with him a little bit, with Bubba McDowell, the head coach of Prairie View A&M, not necessarily interview style, but just talking with him about the program so I could be better educated in terms of what to expect from various programs. I did have a chance to catch up with Alcorn State head football coach Fred McNair. You're going to hear that interview as a replay on the weekend edition of BOXTOROW, which can be heard on a radio station near you, as well as on Sirius XM channel 142, the HBCU channel, Saturdays 9 a.m. That's Eastern, that's 6 a.m. Pacific time. Mark that down. And then also on college sports on Sirius XM, that's channel 84, Friday 6 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Central time, and 3 p.m. Pacific time. So one of the things that I really wanted to gather is the takeaway from the Florida A&M football activities were suspended on Friday by head football coach Willie Simmons because there was a rap artist, Boston Richie, who filmed a video in the Florida A&M locker room. And I haven't seen the video yet, but I may or may not watch the video, but just for some background in terms of what I've read, a couple of players and some Florida A&M paraphernalia in the video, which should not have been there. Now, Tiffany Dawn Sykes, who is the new athletics director at Florida A&M, known Tiffany many years. She's going to do a tremendous job there in Tallahassee, said that though the ban had been lifted, but the investigation is still ongoing. So activities for Florida A&M football are going on. They have not been suspended, but the investigation is still going on. So it's interesting because my initial thought was, well, did the players, because I think what is not known is who authorized the rap Boston Richie to come in and film this. How did that happen? Didn't go through athletics, didn't go through the university, but who authorized this? So, I mean, my initial thought were maybe some of the players allowed for him to come in and do this. I'm not 100% sure, but obviously Willie Simmons was, he was very upset about this. And not upset, but I mean, he was probably mad about this. I mean, let's be honest about it. He came out with a statement on Twitter on Friday saying that football activities were suspended. Now, I'm not sure if he communicated that with athletic administration, meaning the AD, with university administration, or if he just suspended those activities and then they were reinstated by athletics director, by university, et cetera. I'm not 100% sure. Still a lot of questions that still need to be answered. But the bottom line is that the activities have been reinstated. And so listen, for me, having known Coach Simmons for a little while, and this is the second year in a row that we've had a situation with Florida A&M prior to the season. Last year, it was because you had some players that were not certified that didn't get to play. One of those players, most notably, Isaiah Land, maybe cost him an opportunity to play against UNC to really show what he could do at the FBS level. He didn't get drafted. I believe he did sign a free agent deal. But now you have this situation. So a couple of self-inflicted wounds by the Rattlers prior to the season. And more so this season than last, Florida A&M has the target on its back because Florida A&M has been picked to win the East over Jackson State, who's the two-time defending Eastern Division champs. So I'm sure Coach Simmons probably trying to make a statement to his program, to his players. We got to get serious about this thing. And I'm assuming it was well taken, but again, an investigation still going on. So that's that part of it. That was one of the things I really wanted to see, is to get more information in terms of that from SWAC Media Day. And I think there's still questions to be answered. But for right now, it's sort of water under the bridge as the Rattlers are set here to begin summer workouts and to prepare for the fall. And of course, another big game for Florida A&M against Jackson State, and that Orange Blossom Classic's been a big time event. We'll talk a little bit more about the dynamics of the change, maybe of the SWAC, how things are different, because Deion Sanders, who had been the coach for the last 3 seasons at Jackson State, is not there. Again, I was not at Media Day in 2021 or last year, but in terms of the number of media that were there, I'm not sure how many that were there the previous 2 years, but this year, a lot of media, a whole lot of media, to the point I was talking with Mike Wallace. He said, this may be something they would consider making a 2-day event, because if you want to interview everybody, right? So you got all 12 coaches, and then the coaches have a couple of players that they brought along. And then there's Dr. McClelland, who is the commissioner of the SWAC. He's done a phenomenal job. And by the way, it's going to be, of course, the chair of the Division I men's basketball committee, right? So he's up for that. So that's really big, but you have an opportunity to interview him as well. So it may be an opportunity for 2 days of this, but because there are enough media and just a great event. I think the SWAC does a phenomenal job, just a phenomenal event. So, you had the preseason predictions. Florida A&M, as I mentioned, picked to win the East, followed by Jackson State, Alabama State, Alabama A&M, Mississippi Valley State, and then Bethune-Cookman picked to finish 6 out of 6 teams in the Eastern Division. Now, with Jackson State, I definitely can understand, because this may be Florida A&M's year. I mean, they've got plenty of players coming back. When you're talking about the quarterback, Jeremy Musa, who is the preseason player of the year. I mean, he had a really solid, or he had a good season, but again, he's had an offseason to really understand and learn Willie Simmons' offense. And so now, I think he's got a better grasp of the offense. So as solid as a season as he had last year, this should be an even better season for him. You look at, and they've got weapons, guys that come back, a lot of the wide receivers, that offensive line is going to be tight. The Rack Boys is as Coach Simmons likes to call them, run after catch boys, if you will. They catch the ball and run. No Xavier Smith, but you've got plenty of wide receivers that are coming back in a solid offensive line. Then you look at defensively, linebacker Isaiah Major, Kendall Bowler, really good defensive back, is back as well. So this should be they should be the team to beat. I'm not, however, sleeping on Jackson State. I would definitely say Florida A&M is the team to beat. I definitely would say Florida A&M is going to make it to the SWAC championship game. But I'm not sleeping on Jackson State with Coach Taylor now being there, an alum, and the cupboard is not totally bare. Now, that said, there are 70 new players to the program. That's a lot of new players to the program. You still got have some pieces that are coming back, so I'm not sleeping on Jackson State at all. On the Western side, you got Southern at number 1, followed by Alcorn State, number 2, bounce back year for Fred McNair and the Braves, perhaps. Texas Southern, a lot of people like Texas Southern this year at number 3. And in the next couple of days, we'll talk about the coaches poll. We'll talk about the media polls as well that have been released, but a lot of people really like Texas Southern. They've got a high-powered offense. Coach McKinney does. If he can get that defense straight, Texas Southern definitely can make some noise. Followed by Grambling State at number 4, Prairie View A&M at number 5, and Arkansas Pine Bluff at number 6. I really like Southern coming out. I like this pick. Now, Alcorn State's going to be really good. Bit of a bounce-back season. Didn't really have the quarterback play that Alcorn State needed last year. Jarvian Howard could have easily, but I think for me, all respect to Jeremy Musa, for me, my preseason player of the year would have been Jarvian Howard, the running back from Alcorn State. Did it all last year. I forget how many yards he rushed for, but he was really good. He really carried that Alcorn State offense. And if they had any semblance of an offense, the tables may have been different for Alcorn State in 2022. But I like Southern. I really I like what Southern did on last year, and I like what Southern has coming back this year as well. So that's definitely why I'm going with the Jaguars. I mean, I think Eric Dooley's an excellent coach. He did an excellent job getting Southern to that SWAC championship game on last year. And I think Southern's going to be back on this year. Listen, I'm going to give you a dark horse. Can I give you a dark horse for who's going to win? I think Southern. I'm going to say Southern, like Florida A&M. Think from a talent perspective. I mean, I like Alcorn State's talent too. I just like where Southern is with the program. But I think that I'm going to go with a dark horse and predict Southern as the SWAC champions when it's all said and done. Looking at this first team all SWAC, you've got Jeremy Musa at the quarterback, Jarvian Howard, Donovan Eglin as your running backs. The kid from Alabama A&M had a really good season last year. Your offensive lineman, Jalen Goss from Florida A&M, Jonathan Williams of Alabama A&M, Will Reddy of Alcorn State, Cameron Colvin of Florida A&M, TJ Yarborough of Alcorn State rounds out the offensive linemen. Your wide receivers, Jamari Shareed of Florida A&M. And again, they just got so many weapons, does Florida A&M as well. And the other wide receiver, Derek Morton of Texas Southern. Watch out. That guy can really play. As your other wide receiver, your tight end is DJ Stevens from Jackson State. Continuing with the all-SWAC now first team defensive selections. Your linemen, Malachi Bailey of Alcorn State, Taj Brown of Southern, Zarian Hayes of Alabama A&M, and Sundiati Anderson of Grambling. Now, he's been picked to be the defensive player of the year, and Anderson is really good. Your linebackers, Colton Adams of Alabama State was first team HBCU All-America last year. Lewis Matthews of Grambling, and I mentioned Isaiah Major of Florida A&M. Your defensive backs, Omari Hill Robinson of Bethune-Cookman. He's a ball hawk. He had like four or five interceptions last year for the Wildcats. It'd be interesting to see what the Wildcats do and how the Wildcats are able to bounce back as well. Javon Morgan of Florida A&M, Jordan Carter of Southern, and Kendall Bowler, as I mentioned, round out the defensive backs, first team preseason all-SWAC selections. Your kicker, Joshua Griffin from Southern. Your punter, Jimmy Isles from Grambling State. Your return specialist, Darnell Dees from Bethune-Cookman, had 2 touchdown returns, kickoff returns for touchdowns. And then your long snapper is Jason Longcore from Alabama State. I feel like it. And when I look at Bethune-Cookman, right, in sort of the fiasco with Bethune-Cookman during the offseason with the whole Ed Reed deal, and then he was supposed to have been hired as the coach, and then he wasn't exactly hired, and it was a press release put out to say, well, the contract, and then it was just a whole mess that he created, by the way. And I thought it was a good move for Bethune-Cookman to actually cut bait. You bring in Raymond Woody Jr., who is an alum, who's been to a couple of places as an assistant coach. He's got a familiar. Obviously, he's an alum, played there. He's got a vested interest in the program, and so I'm interested to see how things are going to work out at Bethune-Cookman also in 2023. Those are my thoughts from SWAC Media Day, what to expect from the SWAC moving forward. We're going to talk plenty of SWAC football as the season rolls on, as camps open, as a matter of fact, right here on the HBCU Football Daily Podcast. On tomorrow, we'll talk MEAC. Had a chance to be at the MEAC Media Day last Friday. So on Friday's edition of the HBCU Football Daily Podcast, going to talk about the MEAC Media Day and being in MEAC in Norfolk last Friday. Again, tell a couple of friends about the HBCU Football Daily Podcast, where you can find us on our YouTube page, the BOXTOROW channel, also at iHeartMedia.com, as well as BOXTOROW.com, discussing some MEAC on tomorrow's edition of the HBCU Football Daily Podcast. Talk with you then.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the HBCU Football Daily Podcast. You can also listen to the podcast at BOXTOROW.com, iHeartMedia, or wherever you get your podcasts. Don't forget to get your HBCU football fix on BOXTOROW with Donal Ware each weekend on the radio station near you, and on SiriusXM on HBCU Channel 142, and on ESPNU Radio on SiriusXM Channel 84. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at BOXTOROW for the latest in HBCU football, and don't forget to tell a friend.